So you lost the early game and now you're down 5k gold. What should you do next? Well, most people would probably spam the surrender vote right about now, and I already know the top comment on this video will be someone making an FF joke at the video's title. This is a pretty normal reaction we see all the time, since of course it feels like there is nothing you can do, which is somewhat true. You almost entirely lose the initiative when you are this far behind, and there is practically no educational content out there that teaches you what to do in a losing situation. So people just give up and surrender games often way too quickly. This video is my attempt to try and help combat this problem with League's culture, because there is still so much you can do in a game where you're losing in order to poke holes and test your opponents so you can try to mount a comeback in a game that feels doomed. Winning a losing game feels great, right? Well, here is everything you need to know in order to do it.
My name's Rogue and I played League of Legends professionally for 7 years. Now I'm a full-time content creator and coach for all ranks Iron through to Challenger. So if you want more information of what a coaching session with me will look like, you can find more information by following the link in the video description below.
And while you're in the description, you'll also find the link to my Patreon where I post all of the recordings of my best coaching sessions in full, with almost 1,000 hours of content currently available, all sorted by role and rank, including sessions where I coach for professional level teams. You can get a glimpse of what pro level League looks like from the inside. That's why whatever you're looking for, you'll easily be able to find something that's going to help you improve, no matter your rank. As I mentioned in the video intro, when you are losing, you don't get much of a say over what happens on the map, and instead you need to play more reactively to what your opponent does. This might seem like a bad thing, but it's actually extremely liberating and allows you to make use of a different kind of macro that only becomes available to you when you are losing. And the best example of this is easy to see in the context of contesting mid-waves at Prio. Here, red team is down 6,000 gold, yet 3 of them still try to walk up mid outside the safety of their tower in order to catch a wave. Of course, by doing this, you just get engaged on and die. A fight without a vision advantage that happens in the open area of mid lane like this is never going to be a winning fight when you're 6k gold behind. So you of course can't contest a mid wave as it arrives. Here is the big question we need to answer though. Why is it actually so important to contest the mid wave as it arrives? Well, that's because of something I've spoken about several times before, wave-to-wave macro. To quickly get everyone on the same page, the fundamental mechanic that all macro in the game is based upon is that minion waves arrive slightly faster in mid lane than what they do in the side lane. This allows a player who quickly kills a minion wave as it arrives to then move into the adjacent lane, arriving in time to use the minion wave that arrives slightly later in the side lane to push down towers with a numbers advantage. But this isn't something you need to worry about when losing. If you can't contest a wave within the first 2 to 3 seconds of its arrival, there is no reason to contest it at all until you have to catch it at your tower. You either catch a wave as soon as it arrives so that you can utilize wave-to-wave macro, or you catch it when it goes into your tower at the last possible second. There simply is no in-between, and that's what people get wrong. People often make the mistake of standing around in mid, just waiting for their opponent to push in the wave before they then catch it. Instead, these players should be making use of this newfound freedom they have by not having to contest the wave, and they should use that to test their opponent. Now here Varus is 7k gold down, and obviously he's not going to be able to contest this wave on its arrival when down 7k gold, because otherwise he'll just die, which means he doesn't have to be here at all. He can be here when the wave gets the turret, but he doesn't have to be there any sooner. So when you watch what he actually does, he just walks around in the middle of mid lane for about 15 seconds, achieving nothing. And what's worse is when you look at this whole thing from the enemy's point of view, they don't know where Varus is. Oh, never mind, they do. And this is a problem because this takes away our ability to test our opponent, which is the only thing you get to do when you're losing like this. Now, in order for blue team to do anything, they need to get vision in our bot side jungle, since right now it doesn't feel very safe in there. Now, what they can't do is walk in and face check, because we might be stacking a bush with our whole team, and that's how they thread the game. So what they generally do instead is they would push the mid wave, wait till someone shows on the wave, and then walk into the jungle. Since they see one enemy mid, they know they'll have a numbers advantage. So they would push, see an enemy, and walk in. This is what most people do. They push, and they walk in. Did you see the step that they missed? This is how we test them. Our Varus player right now, instead of spending his 15 seconds of free time walking around mid showing unnecessarily, should spend that free time stacking in the jungle with his team in a bush, and then we test our opponent. If the wave moves forward, and the opponent preemptively walks in before they've seen us mid, we can just drop the mid wave and trade it for a kill instead. And worst case, if our opponent is good enough and is patient and they're waiting, we can just come out after accepting defeat, catch our wave, and be sad that they did the right thing. But the key is, we tested them. Make sure you get a ward down in mid so you can see what the enemy does next after they clear the wave. Then hide in the jungle between waves and react to what they do. If you do decide that you have to catch the wave, do it as shown here. At the last possible second when the wave hits the turret, but importantly, pull the wave with you into the jungle to maximize the amount of time you spend in the jungle defending it. This makes it way harder for your opponent to take vision in that area, and you'll be spending way more time in there. Testing your opponent like this is how you can get back into the game when you're losing. People will fail these kind of checks constantly. Rakan, for example, face-checked a bush and got stunned into a wall by Poppy, at the exact same moment that both of his side laners were showing on vision without having TP up, and his ADC had walked off in order to take the red buff with the jungler, leaving him alone. Rakan literally face-checked the jungle, completely alone, and it might have been a kill if only Varus was in position to test him on doing this. A simple pick on a support like this is far more valuable than you think. Once you add up the death timer and time it takes to walk out of base afterwards, a kill like this puts an enemy out of action for almost 2 minutes, which is important because if an enemy doesn't extend their lead, they begin to lose it. Of course, in League you can only have 6 items, and level 18 is the level cap. So once the winning team maxes out their build, they won't get any stronger, and you'll eventually catch back up, putting the game at a 50-50 state, if you can survive until 6 items. Everyone knows that already. But what most people don't consider is that the relative value of a lead diminishes as the game goes on, even before a team maxes out on 6 items. This is very easily understood by looking at XP requirements for a level up. At level 1, you only need 280 XP for a level up, which is about 4.5 melee minions worth. Meanwhile, at level 17, you need 1880 XP, which is over 30 melee minions worth of XP. Imagine a situation where you lose the first wave of the game and fall a full level down on your opponent at just level 1. If that lead stays consistent and doesn't grow, then by level 5, your lane opponent would only be half a level ahead of you instead of a full level ahead of you. And by level 10, you probably wouldn't even notice that they had an XP lead over you anymore, because the amount of XP needed for a level up has grown so much. The same kind of works with gold in a way because of penetration items. When your opponent is winning, they will likely be a higher level than you because of the extra kills, minions, and neutral objectives that they've taken. Through level ups, a champion gains stats. Some of the main stats that they gain are magic resist and, more importantly, armor. Over the course of a game, a generic ADC champion like Ashe gains 78 armor through level ups alone. This gives her over 50% damage reduction against physical damage. So in the late game, even assassins who want to kill a squishy carry like Ashe need to build a percentage armor penetration item to combat the armor gained through level ups. This problem is obviously made even worse against an opponent who is actually building armor items. They get faster level ups granting them base armor, and more gold letting them finish their armor items even quicker. Meanwhile, you receive less gold, which increases the time it takes for you to finish your core items and get to the super important armor penetration items that will make you deal damage again. For this reason, compositions with tanks spike incredibly hard around 1 to 2 items, especially when they're ahead. Think of it like this. Being down 1 full level feels absolutely unplayable when you have 2 items and your opponent has 3. You simply don't deal damage against the 200 armor Ornn who is 4 levels higher than you. But later on into the game, when they have 4 items and you now have 3, including an armor pen item, it suddenly doesn't feel as bad anymore, as you actually have the armor penetration needed to counter your opponent's build. Also, the level gap between you and your opponent has now shrunk to only be a 3 level lead instead of a 4, despite the fact that the actual amount of XP that you both have relative to one another hasn't changed. All of this is just a long way of explaining something that is very simple to understand. When you're losing, you don't have to do anything. You will slowly catch back up to your opponent if they don't extend their lead over you, so don't feel panicked to force some kind of a fight in order to make a comeback. It's on your opponent now to figure out how to make the game end. The only thing you can do is to constantly test your opponent, as we already learned at the start of the video, and to perfect your defensive setup, which is what we'll talk about now. Ward placement should change dramatically when you're behind, since you can't expect to actually defend the wards that you've placed. Instead of placing wards in optimal locations like inside of bushes or in the center of key intersections where they're more likely to be spotted, instead place your wards in places like these. These are places that give slightly less information but are far more likely to survive against an opponent who is actively searching for your wards. It shouldn't be too hard to imagine why these wards are so good when you just imagine what your opponent is going to do with their sweeper and their pink wards. They're probably going to walk into your jungle and take one or two routes with their sweeper. They're going to do something like this, or they're going to do something like this. Where are they going to place their pinks? Maybe a pink here, maybe a pink here, but you're going to notice that all of these wards that I've placed have dodged all of the key locations where people are most likely to go with the sweeping lens, or where they're most likely going to put a pink ward, which is going to be in bushes and in key intersections. Another good rule of thumb is that when you're winning, you want more sweeping lens trinkets, and when you're losing, you want more blue trinkets, so that you can check the neutral objectives from a safe distance without having to face check. Most teams in pro play will also follow this exact same philosophy. As you can see here, the red team who is losing has 3 blue trinkets, so that they can always check the Baron without having to face check it. Also, as a fun side note, just take a look at the location of the wards the red team support has placed in preparation for the Baron defense. These are exactly the same wards that I was using. Not only that though, but also pay attention to the way that the Ezreal catches the mid wave. He doesn't stand around waiting for it to get pushed in, he only catches it when it hits the turret, and when he does catch it, he pulls it all the way over into his jungle in order to maximize the amount of time that he spends in the jungle, just like I did in my Varus example. This was the first pro match that I opened when trying to look for an example of a losing team buying blue trinkets, and I only found this clip after I filmed all of those previous segments, by the way. So it's nice for me to have some confirmation that everything I teach is still being used by the new generation of pro players in regards to their defensive setups. Now before you go, do me a big favor and go click the subscribe button, or even leave a comment with any tips you have for other viewers. All of these types of interactions make YouTube's algorithm love me and will help push my content out to even more people, which hopefully increases the chance that in your next game, your teammates might be a little bit more open to the idea of a comeback, and you might finally start to see a few more no votes on that next surrender vote you have. And as always guys, have a great day.